Ladies and gentlemen, this is David Mirikitani with another episode of Matt Chat. We are brought to you by USA Wrestling, the national governing body for wrestling in the United States, and by Nike Wrestling. Go to athleteps.com for all of your Nike and USA Wrestling branded gear. We're going to shift gears a little bit from our normal interviews. Super excited to be joined by, I want to get your title right, the president of Think Iowa City and the Iowa City Area Sports Commission, Mr. Josh Schamberger. Josh, thanks so much for joining me, man.
You bet. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a collaboration. I talked to Gary Abbott and some of those guys, and obviously I'm excited. I'm going to be coming up there for the event. It's going to be a fun week for me. I'm going to go straight from the Jiu-Jitsu World Championships and fly from Anaheim to Des Moines and figure out my way over to Coralville. But I've been to Coralville a couple times. The last one, I think, was the World Team Trials in May. But we want to get everybody familiar with what's going on, the city. The fact that I've been there, I feel like I can maybe ask some semi-intelligent questions. And then we'll talk about some specific matchups. You were kind enough to tell me on off air that you're a big wrestling fan, so that actually will make this even more fun. So let's start at the beginning. I'm a guy that runs events on a significantly smaller scale than what you're doing, but I'm always intrigued by this. What is the bidding process for getting an event like the World Cup? How much is it UWW? How much is it USA Wrestling? How far out do you even have to be involved in something like this? Kind of soup to nuts it for us, because I think a lot of people are fascinated by this stuff.
Yeah, no problem. Well, it's usually a couple years process to get in the hopper and the queue, I guess, so to speak, and put your application in. It is 100% with UWW, although you work very closely and in tandem with USAW, who is the host governing body for any UWW events that happen here in the United States. And so in anything that we've ever done, we hosted this same event in 2018, and that was after our team organized two very successful Olympic team trials in 2012 and 2016. We were asked to consider an international event, and originally it was a ranking tournament, and we kind of evolved into this World Cup opportunity. That went very, very well, and so the familiarization with the product was pretty easy for me to think through a pro forma and how it would work. I did have some changes and some ideas that I had for UWW to consider. They were pretty dramatic in some instances, and so I took Luke Eustace, who heads up my sports commission, longtime wrestling director of ops at Iowa, and we flew to Switzerland, and we met with UWW and talked to them about some of these changes. They were intrigued, noodled on it for a while, then COVID hit. And then in 2020, 2021, we sent Rich Binder and Pete Isaias with an updated proposal to host the World Cup to Oslo, Norway, and we were awarded the bid for the initial 2 years. So there's been a lot of changes. Those kind of came from us, but they're going to make the product that much better for fans and for UWW to sell it in future years.
Well, first of all, congratulations. Again, running things on a much smaller scale. I know how difficult it is to secure things. Sometimes the things that seem like they'd be difficult occasionally end up easier, but there's always a few things that end up being dramatically more difficult than people on the outside would think. So I'd love to sometime maybe get to visit with you and pick your brain off air. I'm sure there's some funny stories. May not all be fit for sound, but so a couple of things you mentioned here. First of all, when you talked about 2018, I was working for Track Wrestling then and actually got to do some on-the-ground interviews. We want to make sure people understand that was held at Carver Hawkeye, and this is which is in Iowa City, and this is being held at the Extreme Arena, which is in Coralville. And am I correct that Coralville is a suburb of Iowa City, or is it actually a separate town?
No, it's a separate community, but it's considered a suburb, and the difference between this arena and Carver Hawkeye Arena is about 1.5 miles, the distance. Yeah. So it's pretty much the exact same community. Most people that come here for Hawkeye football or Hawkeye wrestling are staying in a hotel room in Coralville. So very, very close. Brand new arena that opened in the fall of 2020. You've been there, as you said. We've hosted World Team Trials. We've hosted U.S. Open twice, Folk Style Nationals. We've had probably more wrestling in the building than anything else, but that's just fine with me. And it's just a perfect size venue for World Cup.
And the Donnybrook High School event, I think, is actually there. So, like, I'm running the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dual Meet Classic, and unfortunately, because of travel rules, Iowa teams can't come
Correct.
to Oklahoma, but Liberty, Kansas City is in both tournaments. And so when I talk to them about that, I'm friends with, we'll give a quick shout out to Dustin Brewer and Bricker Dixon, the coaches over there, really good guys, running a great program. So let's talk, you mentioned dramatic changes. What were the original ideas, and then what ideas did you present that were so radically different?
Well, originally, World Cup was like an 8-team tournament and 8 countries, and quite honestly, I should think, and my brain is so muddied right now with working with embassies and visas over the last 3 weeks that I may have even been 10 teams. But World Cup was different. It was just the men's. And we went and basically said, we'd like them to consider adding the Women's World Cup to run parallel with the Men's World Cup. There's been a lot of talk, and obviously the advancement of women's wrestling in America and in the world has been substantial. It's huge. It's something we all support very much. And we just want to see UWW and USAW and everybody put women on an equal stage to men. And so we said we'll host them both at the exact same time, 2 mats, and it'll be electric. And we'll have all the countries in town on both sides. And that was the first thing. And then they had this idea of an all-world team. And so the product, unlike 2018, which was just basically 2 pools of men's tournament qualified teams, this time around, as determined by the World Championships in Serbia in September, it's the top 5 ranking men's teams in the world, the top 5 ranked women's teams in the world, based on those finishes at World Championships. And then there is a 6th team added to the men's side and the women's side that's considered an all-world team. That team is comprised of the top ranked wrestlers in the world by world ranking that aren't part of those qualifying nations.
Yes, sir.
And those teams are absolutely stacked. If you look at the all-world men's team, the worst place finisher at the World Championships was 5th place, the Ukrainian heavyweight. Everybody else medaled.
And so they're probably that world team's probably the favorite. Like, so Grant Turner, who is, I'm sure you know Grant from Nike.
Oh yeah, he was just here an hour ago.
Yeah. So he's in Des Moines, and he's part of the match of the Weighing In podcast that we do, and is responsible for putting like the uniforms together for those teams. And he was just at the Greco World Cup, and that same concept, like there was like a certain controversy in how they scored a match, which affected dual meet score. But this world team is going to be a team on both sides to reckon with, maybe on paper, actually the favorites, especially if some countries don't bring their number ones in every way. Right.
Exactly. And when I got those rosters originally and I said, here's who we're inviting and here's who's accepted, I forwarded that to Bill and Terry. And I said, hey, FYI, this team's looking pretty tough. To which they both text me back right away and said, hey, we're pretty tough too. And I said, I know we are, but we got to show up and be ready to go because
I was lucky enough
some firepower.
I was lucky enough to have Bill on after the World's first one to get him on, and it was a fun conversation. So let's talk about, I want to circle back to Luke Eustace, but I want to talk about format. So you mentioned 2 mats. Okay. So that building is essentially, and this is as an outsider, it's almost like an indoor, like a hockey rink or an indoor soccer building. So it's an oval. The seats are angled so that there's really no bad seats in the building. There's an entire, when you go through the other side, basically like an entire open, gigantic gym area. Like Luke Eustace told me there's a gazillion mats up there. Like all these other things are all in place. Obviously, USA Wrestling will bring their own official mats, but there's plenty of rooms for people to warm up. The sight lines are really awesome. So if it's 2 mats, and am I right that everybody duels everybody? So it's a 5 duel event. Is that right?
No, they actually will be broken into 2 pools. The women will be on mat B, the men are on mat A. and based on ranking, they'll be in 2 pools of 3. And then they'll wrestle on Saturday in their pool with the hope of meeting Sunday. Sunday, there'll only be 4 head-to-head duels. There'll be a 3rd place duel women, 3rd place men, championship duel women, championship men. That'll all be on one mat Sunday. But Saturday, the women will be running alongside the men in their pools.
So if they seed it like teams 1, 4, and 6 are in Pool A, teams 2, 3, and 5 are in Pool B, and like for example, like team 1 would probably wrestle team 4, then get a bye, then wrestle team 6. The same thing 2 would wrestle 3 by 5. Obviously identical for men and women. And then at the end of that, now if the seeds hold, 3 would wrestle 4 for 3rd, 1 would wrestle 2 for 1st.
Exactly.
5 and 6 don't wrestle. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. The only interesting thing in there is that the world team is ranked 6th. And that's probably not totally true, but
oh my God.
Their seeds are based on their world team rankings as of Serbia. So USA is 1 in the men, Iran is 2, Japan 3, Mongolia, and Georgia. And then the all-world team.
So the all-world team will be in the same pool as the U.S.?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's going to be amazing. So I think one of the things that's always interesting at events like this, like we're all fans of the NCAA Nationals, but like the first round especially, it's hard because there's 8 mats, right? And if you're an Iowa person, if you're watching an Iowa State wrestler, and you hear this boom, between like a Oklahoma State Michigan match, by the time you hear the boom and you look over, what happened is over. They're not running the replay. Yeah, and then you look back and the match you were watching, you missed too. So like it's difficult. It's the greatest 3 days, I think, of the weekend for most people, that especially if you're a college fan.
No doubt.
But this feels like you're not going to miss much wrestling. I know there's a big board up there, I assume, because, they were using the board for like the matches coming down and stuff like that. So I think fans will be able to see a lot of the replays as well, correct?
Yeah, we have 2 very large high-def boards. We're bringing in extra video boards here. It's going to look like what just happened in Baku. The World Cup setup is dramatically different and enhanced. It's going to be very, very entertaining, and the look and feel and the aesthetics are going to be Olympic-like in this venue. So there'll be 2 matches going on, and each of them will have their own video board dedicated, and reviews will go up there and everything. Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that watch this pod that aren't necessarily huge international wrestling fans. They're wrestling fans, and a lot of them are like, high school, college fans. So the challenge system in international wrestling is somewhat similar to, high school and college, but in some ways super different. 3 officials, very important to know where the camera is, to know if the people that disagreed with you had the same angle or not. There's a lot of YOLO bricks thrown because there's nothing to lose. It's 1 per match. Obviously, language barriers will be something that, potentially can be a problem. But the good part of the NCAA is when it's 8 mats is it's a 3-day tournament. It would be a 6-day tournament if they ran it on 2 mats. The good part of your event is you're probably not going to miss anything. And since it's a much lower number of matches and number of duels, we're probably not going to be there for 13 hours. It doesn't feel
No, you won't. Really the schedule is pretty interesting. Friday, they're going to have opening ceremonies, and then they're going to go right into a big team presentation. It'll be almost like a UFC style press conference atmosphere in the venue. It's open to the public, no tickets required to come in, and they're going to bring every nation out one by one and introduce them as a team. The arenas will represent Ukraine or Japan or whatever. And then Saturday, we start wrestling at 10 or 11, and we'll be done at about 9, and that'll be 3 sessions. There'll be breaks built into each because, I go to all the NCAAs. I go to Big Tens. We love our intermissions. We love our breaks, our session breaks, to go out and have a couple cocktails. That can happen. And then Sunday we'll start wrestling at noon, and we'll be done at 7:30. So it'll be, and the dual team format is is I think way more exciting in a lot of ways than an individual match when you start getting close. I remember in 18, I think the Cuba Japanese third place match was more electric than US Azerbaijan at the end. I mean, it was crazy.
It was insane. Yeah. And I think the other thing is, like, I think sometimes wrestling especially on the folk style side, is its own worst enemy, right? Like in dual meet scoring, it's 3, 4, 5, or 6 versus 0. An 8-person tournament is scored different than a 16-person tournament, or scored different than a 32-person tournament. We only have one tournament the whole year where there's 3-day weigh-ins. Like, it's very hard to explain, like, to your spouse or a non-wrestling fan, like when Spencer Lee goes from the quarters to the semis, he got 6th place points. Like, that's not a and bonus, but then and then he gets 2nd place points, but then if he misses weight, he loses all the points. So I've been lucky enough to call the junior duels for USA Wrestling, and the dual meet point system, we'll just run through it real quick. It's 5-0, 4-0, 4-1, 3-0, 3-1, depending on pin, tech with no score, tech with score, decision, opponent scores or not. Like, there's a lot of cheering for the person that's losing. Like, if you're beating me 8-0 with 20 seconds left, your coach is going nuts for you to get to 10, and my coach is going nuts for me to get to 1, because it can at that point go 3-0, 4-0, or 3-1. And since there's only 10 matches in the duel, there is generally, if it's a tie duel, it's usually 5-5, which is the first criteria. So those bonus points really matter.
Huge. There's no doubt. And it's super exciting. I mean, how many times have we been watching a freestyle match and somebody's down 8 and all of a sudden they get a leg lace in and they're right back in it? I mean, it can turn on a dime. I mean, it doesn't happen a lot, but it happens a lot more. You see a lot more comebacks and turnarounds than you do. I mean, wasn't one of our main guys down 8 or 9, almost a point away from being teched in Tokyo and rolled back and won? I mean, that's an exciting thing.
2 pretty recent examples. Seth Gross was losing to Jesse Mendez by 9 at the World Team Trials in Coralville. In the first round of the tournament, came all the way back, made the World Team, and was in 2 medal matches. And then at the 16 Olympic Trials, Aaron Pico was down by 9 to Ness, and his corner threw a brick, and he kicked the brick back and came back and teched him. And they'd have lost the challenge. He'd have been out. So you're right. Laces and gut wrenches are, the other thing too is, like, if you take me down in freestyle and then you take me down again, it's 4-0. It's not 4-1 and 4-2. Yeah. So that lead is not as big as people think it is.
No, it certainly isn't. And that's what's exciting, Yeah, I mean, I just can't wait. I went to Serbia just to make sure that as these teams qualified, I went and met with their national federation presidents. You joked at the front end, we have this couple sidebars. There are a lot of interesting conversations there, especially when I sat down with President Dabir from Iran, and some of the discussions there about them getting over here. And there's nothing like an elite level, best in the world freestyle match with any of these guys. Folks are going to be able to see that Jordan Burroughs Iranian final again here in Iowa, in Coralville. Pretty dang special opportunity. And so
the women obviously, and the women did an unbelievable job. So you're going to see like a Dom Parrish, a Helen Maroulis.
Well, Amit, the hottest wrestler on the planet right now, 3 gold medals this year. She's going to be out here taking souls.
Anita Moore's a story. If a lot of people are just casual international fans, one was the U20s, U23s, and Senior Worlds all in the same year. So literally just unbelievable how good she is.
Right?
Yeah. And the other thing is that these are all matchups. There's obviously 6 Olympic weights, 4 non-Olympic weights really sprinkled in between the 6 Olympic weights. And this is also where you can start potentially seeing, like, hey, David won this non-Olympic weight. Josh won the Olympic weight. David's too big to go down. He's going to have to go up. You can kind of start playing that game in your head, like, how would that matchup be, kind of thing. And I think those are things that, we're obviously like, Burroughs is going to have to go down to wrestle off Dake. like a Jaden will go up and wrestle Snyder, like some of the things we know in our country. But it's interesting to look at these international matches and go, okay, like, the skill level gets so funneled down when you eliminate 40% of the weight in women's freestyle, men's freestyle, and or Greco. It's a lot. So it's fascinating.
Yeah, no doubt.
Tell me what it's like to work with Luke Eustace.
It's by and large fantastic. I mean, he's an ornery guy sometimes, and that's the nature of who he is. He grew up in the pride of Blue Earth, Minnesota, and wrestled his whole life, and so he's definitely from the family, and he's as nutty as most that I've come across in the family. I didn't grow up in a wrestling community. I grew up on military bases and spent most of my life surfing and on the beach. But I've come to deeply appreciate the wrestling community since I moved here 25 years ago. And he was director of ops for Iowa Wrestling for 14 years after he wrestled there at Iowa, national runner-up, fantastic wrestler back in the day. And he's been with me now for about 3.5 years, and just been phenomenal. And the two of us, I think, make a good team, because he certainly knows how to put on a wrestling event and create something special. And he's got me to find a way to figure out how to pay for it. And I'm a big fan and want to continue to cement our community as Wrestling Town USA, which I think we've delivered on the promise behind that brand for a while now.
Yeah, I think the Coralville thing. Okay, so I'm in St. Louis, and I always joke I have to be Japanese Switzerland. Like I root for everybody and root for nobody. Like I have relationships with coaches and almost all the good teams. But at the end of the day, I just hope that the referees are fair and nobody gets hurt, and that the right person whoever won that day was the better wrestler, kind of thing. Yeah. But there's obviously certain pockets, of the country that have a lot of support versus others. St. Louis is, again, like, we're a pro sports town. I think when you're in cities or states that don't have a lot of pro sports teams, the college sports become more important. I originally went to Iowa State coming out of high school. So, my dad was around that. He was a graduate assistant for Harold Nichols and Les Anderson. So, got a chance to be around, the legend. Like, my dad was there when Gable was there, that kind of stuff. Chuck Jean, those guys. So it is the history of wrestling in the state of Iowa is gigantic, huge footprints there. And so it's great to see, because when you go to those events, I always say to people, like, look, like, there'll be 16,000 people for the Iowa Penn State or the Iowa Oklahoma State duel. I mean, they've already sold out all their duels, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But like in some places, then if you go and you have a thing like this, maybe 1,600 people show up. Mm-hmm. So what is the capacity for Extreme Arena seating capacity versus Carver Hawkeye, and how do you expect ticket sales to go? And then we'll get into how people can get tickets and boxes and suites and all that stuff.
Yeah, so the capacity for this particular setup is about 5,200 in the venue. In 2018, when we hosted World Cup, we had just over 8,000. And so that was fantastic. What's hurting us a little bit and why we're comfortable with the 5,000 is the fact that the UWW moved the World Cup from April to December. And April is just, target rich date for something like this. We're just really getting in freestyle Greco season. Finished NCAAs, which, by the way, there is no better. I mean, if I had a vote, and I don't have a vote on anything, St. Louis should host NCAAs every single year. There is no better place than that Scott Trade Center, if it's still called that. And it's just ideal. I mean, I've been to all of them, and it's perfect. But
from your lips to Chris Roseman's ears,
it's the truth. It is the truth. It is phenomenal. But we have 5,200 here. The problem with December is we're in the middle of high school wrestling season. Yeah. There's just so many other things. So, but I fully intend us to have a full building, and I think we're on our way there. I think we're trending that way, and we'll get there. It's just been a lot slower go. And I think part of that has to do with the very quick turnaround too between World Championships and World Cup. Usually we had 8 months.
Yeah.
Now we've got 90 days. And so we spent so much time on visas and all these countries and embassies. We've been doing our marketing, but it's just today that we're announcing the Team USA rosters. Today, about 3 weeks out. People want to know who's wrestling. And so we'll get there. We're going to have a good crowd. International wrestling is a little bit different than obviously Hawkeyes, but on the women's team, we're going to have a Hawkeye on the team. Felicity Taylor is going to be on the women's team, and she's currently the number 2 at her weight, and the top 2 will be on the team, and that'll create some energy and some buzz for her. And as Clarissa Chun sets up her program, unattached this year, but ready to roll next year.
Yeah, for people that have been under a rock, Iowa added women's wrestling, and so I've had Clarissa on. I've had Gary Mayab on before. Gary actually coached me in Fargo back when it was in the Unidome.
Nice.
My dad. So there's a lot of connections there. So 5,200 tickets. Like I run smaller charity events, and I always tell people, like, if I think my event will sell 500 tickets, I want to put it in a 400 seat gym, because then it's big and it's loud.
Oh yeah.
And like, if you put 5,000 people in Carver Hawkeye, it doesn't feel like it's going to feel inside of Extreme Arena. So tell people, I guess, everything we need to know about tickets, whether it's like 1-day sessions, 2-day sessions, suites, boxes, upper level, lower level. The floor is yours on that.
Yeah. Well, as far as suites, I think we only have one left. So if anybody's interested in a suite, you better get a hold of you just pretty quick, because there's 14 suites and they're all sold except for one for this event. There are multiple ticket options. The main website is worldcupcoralville.com or worldcupiowacity.com. They'll both get you there.
Okay.
We have an all session ticket. It's $90. That gets you Friday, Saturday, Sunday, everything you need. Again, there's no bad seat in the building. It's truly an electric environment in there. It's opened just 2 years ago, and it's got the state-of-the-art 360 ribbons and the sport lighting, and it's going to be pretty insane. There is single-day tickets available. Those are $50. You can pick either Saturday or Sunday. Sunday's even got a unique opportunity for particular sports teams, whether it's college or high school. We're opening up 440 floor seats right off championship mat for Sunday only. So there's an option there. I think it's buy a team for 12 tickets, and you get 12 tickets, but you pay for 10. I think that's only $500 per team for all that. There's a lot of different.
A bunch of groups want to get together and use their fantasy football team name, they can come in that way.
They probably could, even though I think Luke's going to kind of monitor that. He definitely wants to take care of some of these high schools.
There's the spirit and the letter of the law on that one. Yeah.
Yeah, there is. Just like people have asked, well, what's like a youth ticket? I'm like, well, we're not going to be IDing 12-year-olds at the door. I mean,
but
if
you're
be an honorable
paying
person.
Taxes, you're paying the adult price. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but there's some other options too. There's, we learned in 2018, there's a lot of folks that want it to be first class. And so there's a ticket package that's $275, which gets you a lot of stuff. Special parking, it gets you a lot of merch, some Team USA stuff. But that's the high ticket. And then there's a $90 ticket, which is everything. So
let me review it just as a person, like if I were buying a ticket. So I can go $50 for 1 day, $90 for essentially 3 days. The 2 days,
the whole thing,
plus the free press conference. It's World Cup Coralville or worldcupiowacity.com.
You got it. Yeah. And the whole schedule's there, everything.
Yeah. And even if people forget that, they can just Google World Cup wrestling tickets and it's going to take them there. Yeah. I mean, so a lot of us don't, like we have a lot of people that, probably this time of the year it's snowblower, but a bunch of people tell me that we're lawnmower background, that people are cutting their grass, they're listening to us. So, I mean, you don't have to write.
Just Google it. It's the only World Cup in the United States, so they'll find us pretty dang quick.
Yeah, but part of the reason why we wanted to do this podcast is do whatever we could to promote it. So I'm going to immediately take credit for the 13 suites already sold.
Yeah, okay, good.
I'm going I'm gonna text Eustace and say I'm taking credit for something I didn't even know existed.
Well, I think Nike and USAW took one of them, so you can get credit for that.
Yeah, those they're the best in the business. It's a pleasure to work with those guys in the capacity they've allowed me to.
Yeah.
So, and then I guess like, basically you're either gonna, if you're depending on where you are, you'll be closer to either the women's or the men's wrestling and that kind of stuff. But again, having been there, folks, I'm not joking. Like, not really bad sight lines. I think the World Cup had 4 or 6 matches and there was no bad sight line. So 2 is going to be pretty awesome. I'm guessing they'll be, right near the 50-yard line on each side of it. So,
yeah.
So I'm blessed that you're not just the organizer logistics guy, because it frankly would have been difficult to drag to sort of fill space. So you're a huge wrestling fan, you know the sport. Tell me some of the matches that you're excited about that, let's, whether you want to start on the men's or women's side, what are just some of the matches, or even just specific athletes? You're like, hey, I don't know exactly who's going to wrestle their 1s and 2s, but like, I can't wait to see so-and-so wrestle.
Yeah. Well, I've been fortunate enough to see the rosters and who's in Athena and who's actually trying to get visas to come over here and wrestle. And I can tell you that Iran is bringing their 1s and their 18. There's one guy that's not on the roster that I think folks will be disappointed with. But outside of that, there's going to be some serious firepower coming from the Iranian men's team. And it's no surprise, that's the way they probably should have it, considering the thumping that we put on them in Serbia. So is what it is. And a lot of the other countries, they're bringing their stars. As we already mentioned, that all world team. I mean, that guy from Armenia that won, or Albania that won in the gold medal match against Gilman. He's coming. I mean, he's coming to wrestle. And unfortunately, Gilman's not going to be on the roster, but that's going to be a good matchup with that guy in Soriano, who's going to represent us at 57 kilo, which, I'm assuming this will be announced probably right now when we're talking some of these roster changes, but Jordan Burroughs is going to wrestle the Iranian guy again. And I don't have the names top of mind like you do, but I know the matches and I remember them well. And
I think a lot of us are that way, right? Like, I remember this match, super competitive, skill level, like you're saying. What's interesting was when we were breaking down the Iran, however you say it, versus the United States, if you looked at it on a dual meet basis, it was, I think, 6-4 United States. It wasn't as bad as the team score was. And then Iran at one weight had to forfeit because they had an Israeli athlete, and then that person lost. And if people don't know international wrestling, if you beat me and then you lose, I'm out. And so, and that was Yazdani's little brother, who's pretty freaking good, and didn't even get to wrestle, didn't get to step out on the mat.
He didn't make weight, right?
No, he made weight. He had to wrestle the Israeli athlete, and so he's not allowed to wrestle.
There was one guy, though, I thought it was him in Serbia, that didn't make weight and didn't even wrestle, and on the Iranian side.
Maybe you're right. But either way, there's going to be some guys, whether it was, for those reasons or the other reasons, is assuming they make weight, they're going to be better at that weight than they were versus a guy that never stepped on the mat.
Yeah. And I think the Japanese team, I mean, has absolutely dominated women's wrestling. And so, that roster, I'd have to go back and look at it, but I fully expect them to send a strong team and represent their number 1 worldwide designation. But I also am super excited to see Team USA women defend home soil against Japan here, and that head-to-head. The all-world women's team on that is absolutely stacked too. I think there's 3 or 4 current world champions on the all-world women's team, including Turkish heavyweight, the 2 from Moldova. There's a 2 serious. The Ukrainian women's team is pretty dang good. I think there's 3 or 4 that medaled in Serbia. They definitely earned their 5th place designation. Mongolia was super strong. China. I mean, some of the matchups are going to be really, really good. I don't see a lot of blowouts. I mean, in this, there isn't a country, in 2018, because Russia and Iran played games with us, at the 11th hour, we had to invite in Mongolia and India. And nothing against Mongolia and India, but they weren't the highest ranking field teams in the country at that time. India arrived and landed at the airport here in Iowa. They landed at 10 p.m. on Friday night. We picked them up. We took them to the hotel. They had a little bit of food, and they opened the World Cup at 10 a.m. the next morning against Team USA from India. 12 hours from the moment they landed.
So literally, we have to give them a ton of respect for
ton of respect.
Traveling, competing, and really, you don't see a lot of articles about them complaining about the situation like that.
No way. And they were huge, and we went overboard to welcome them, and Mongolia for filling in for us. But you're not going to see any matches like that, total blowouts here at this World Cup. It's going to be tough sledding across the board. And, there'll be some guys that, we obviously know when Burrow steps on the mat, we should take care of business pretty quickly. When Snyder gets on the mat, we'll probably take care of business at that weight pretty quickly. But everything else is going to be pretty good. Yanni Diakmahalis, rising star, going to be here at 61 and
65, right?
65. Sorry, yeah, 61. 61 is gross.
Yeah,
got an Iowa storyline. Tough part of his career and history. Some setbacks there, but when he steps out here, that's one of the best things about this deal. When in 18, this crowd a largely Iowa crowd went absolutely nuts, and we're the biggest David Taylor and Dake fans.
Yeah,
that's what it's going to be when Gross walks in here and Soriano walks in here. It's about let's strap in and go.
It's been interesting being literally the smallest possible cog of the USA Wrestling machine. But to get to talk to the people involved with USA Wrestling and how, like, one of the things that Bill Zadek talked about was the exchange of ideas between himself and the immediate coaches. Like if Cale Sanderson is Gilman's coach or Zane's coach or whoever, and also between the coaches, like different, like a Mark Manning and say a Tom Brand sharing ideas, based on, hey, like, here's how we defend this lefty underhook that Iran is so good at, and it is literally like people will set aside sort of the regional differences for the national pride. And, maybe it's obviously like they still want to beat each other's brains out, the other 9 months of the year and on the recruiting trail and everything else. But it is a very cool thing to see a ton of alpha males and females on both sides, set that aside. I definitely want to talk about the women's side of this because it's really exciting that, for example, like a Dom Parrish who broke through and won a world title. Now, like she was, like one of the people at Sunkist that hadn't even made a team or medaled and punched all the way through. An unbelievable story, an awesome interview, like says things exactly like no filter. And I mean that in the best possible way.
No
He's the anti-Derek Jeter. Talk to Jeter for 20 minutes and get nothing. Talk to Dom for 20 seconds and get gold. Literally and metaphorically. So I think there's so many things that people can get excited about. I don't know when I'm getting to Iowa City because it depends on this jiu-jitsu tournament, but I'm hoping to get in Friday now based on the press conference thing you're talking about. I think whenever you can be next to greatness, like, I mean, you're doing great things up there, but whenever you can surround yourself with greatness, it sort of subconsciously or consciously forces you to level up. And if you're a fan of the sport and you can watch these countries being interviewed, sometimes it's just how a person carries themselves, maybe one statement, a philosophy on how they look at challenges or problems or things like that, that can literally make you a better coach, a better husband, a better wife, a better parent, a better athlete, whatever. So I think it's a pretty unique opportunity that you're providing for these people. And I hope a lot of people take advantage of it.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I get a lot of value out of being around these leaders. Now, granted, it's a totally different set of work and responsibilities for industry, what we do. But I can tell you that I think I've been better at my job and do what I do by surrounding myself with Dan Gable as close as I am, and just listening to that guy from time to time, and certainly somebody like Terry Steiner, who I have incredible respect for, and Clarissa Chun and these folks, and just the way they carry themselves, the way they motivate, the way they change messaging to depending on the person and athlete and what they hear, and just get the best out of that human being. And I've tried to do the same thing with our teams and copy some of that. So, I think I am very excited about the women. I'm most proud in the 50 years. This is the 50th anniversary of Title IX. I'm most proud that we're going to be the first city in the United States and the first city in the world to put this on the same time with women. I sent a note to Adeline Gray a couple months back, who I've gotten to know, and we've hosted a lot of events here. And I'm a super fan of Adeline and most accomplished women's wrestler, and she's going to be here. She had her twins, and she'll be coming back. She won't be wrestling, of course, but I just told her it's absolutely important that she's in the building. I mean, she has to be here. And so I'm super excited to have her here and her family. And as we watch Team USA Women and Dom and Diamond and Jakara and, Amit and all of them hopefully run the table. And I got two little girls here. I don't have two little girls. I got two boys, but I got two girls here that I've kind of handpicked just based on their storyline and what they've been doing in their life, that are going to march out and carry the flag and the sign with the USA Women. And, a little 8-year-old girl that's been just destroying boys for the past 4 years. She's been wrestling. She's going to lead that team out there. And what that says about her and Iowa sanctioning wrestling last year, I mean, that just gives me goosebumps to know that we are in a position to create an environment like that, and to have that electricity just exuberate in the whole building, the fans. And for that little 8-year-old girl, who last time we did this 18, it was Hunter Garvin, little kid, Hunter Garvin, who now just committed and is going to be wrestling for Stanford. He was running around there. He remembers that. Trust me. He texts me a lot. It's awesome. Opportunities we can create, right? It's awesome.
I remember when I was 9 years old, I was at the Cyclone Open, and Dave Schultz beat Kevin Jackson in the final. And my dad was coaching a team. And I asked my father, I said, how did he do that move? And Dave Schultz is in the hallway sweating profusely. And, Kevin Jackson's built like a middle linebacker. Dave Schultz is built like Yoda. And you're like, how the hell did that happen? And my dad goes, go ask him. I'm like, I'm 9 years old. I'm like, I'm not going to ask him. And he goes, Dave, this is my son, David. And I remember Dave Schultz, like for 7 minutes, was sweating all over me, showing me what he did. And you don't forget those things. It's emotional for me even thinking about that. I mean, obviously Dave Schultz is no longer with us, but even if he had been, even if it had been a Dan Gable, you remember these moments where these people that didn't have to be kind to you were kind to you. And if you're a good person, it impacts how you treat other people. If you start feeling too good about yourself, just remember, this guy talked to me, this woman talked to me when I had no reason to. And pay that forward. So okay, so let's make sure everybody's caught up. World Cup Coralville or WorldCupIowaCity.com, or just Google World Cup wrestling tickets if you don't have a URL memory. And the dates again are December
9th through the 11th.
Yep, the wrestling's on 10 and 11. The pre-match interviews and ceremonies on the 9th.
On the 9th, and we have it's going to be broadcast live to all these countries, through Iran, through Japan, Poland, where Ukraine's at, and Mongolia. It'll be a big deal. And we got all the delegations. It's probably over 400 people from these visiting nations that'll be coming in, and we've been working with the embassies to get squared away. So what's interesting is on the women's side, 3 of the nations competing and 2 other nations who aren't competing but are going to be flying in to watch the World Cup. Those 5 nations are sticking around for another 8 days to do a full Team USA training camp here in town. So Kyrgyzstan is bringing in their women's team. Canada is bringing in their women's team.
That's amazing.
And then Mongolia, China, and Ukraine are sticking around and going to do a training camp for another 5-6 days. So
well, they're all
pretty
just trying to get that balmy Iowa City, Coralville
they
December
can't,
weather.
yeah,
For.
they are. We're gonna have them do some baths, put them in the river, and then get them in a sauna. So it'll be good.
Yeah, the polar plunge.
Yeah.
I'm friends with Chad Beatty over there. So
Oh yeah, he's one of the best.
He is. Yes, he is definitely one of the best. So this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you taking time.
Thanks for your time. Yeah.
No, this was a complete no-brainer when Gary reached out, and as usual, I want to thank Gary and Rich and Pete and all those guys. I'm sure you do too, obviously, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I work with them daily, and Pete and I call each other probably 4 times a day, and Christina and Cody and Bill, and I mean that whole crew is top notch.
Yeah, they're a great crew, and Joe Russell might be the funniest quiet guy in the world.
No doubt. him and Laura and Les, and
yeah,
I mean they're all just good. Taylor, just phenomenal people.
Yeah, so and I guess the other thing that I don't know that we dwelled on, but you have this for 2 years, correct?
We do. We said if we'll help you develop the product, but we got to be the ones to host it and send it on its way like a little bird. we want to be able to cement it as the standard.
Right. Well, I mean, this, you've run a lot of events. The first time rarely goes perfect or perfectly. My mom was an English teacher, rarely goes perfectly. So whatever tweaks need to be made, you got a second chance to run at it. And then when it goes back in the bid, I'm sure based on how you guys have done, you'll be at the top of the list. So yeah. So very exciting.
Well, we'll do it for 2 years, and then I intend to I got one more box to check, and we'll see what we can do to get Junior Worlds here.
That'd be awesome. So
put that one at Carver though. We need the seats.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. So, well, it's not a terrible drive for me. It's only like 4.5.
Same with me and you and Nat NCAAs. We could just work with each other here, back and forth.
I like that.
The Saints.
You can never have enough high quality connections in this world. So that would be a blessing for sure. So anything else you want to say before we sign off?
No, thanks for everything. And I hope to see everybody. It's not too many opportunities. You can see truly the best in the world right here, and they're coming.
That's a perfect statement, folks. Literally the best in the world, men and women on equal planes. Okay. That's very important for people to understand. And it's showcased. It is spread out. You're not going to miss any wrestling. If you've ever been to a high level event, they throw enough bricks to build a small house. So there's going to be plenty of time if you're waiting for that to watch the other match and catch up. And literally America is going to be putting their best foot forward. If you're able to go on Friday, that sounds like an amazing experience as well. And I don't think we need to sell anybody who watches this podcast on the quality of wrestling. So Josh, it sounds like you're coming down the home stretch of this thing. I would say congratulations in advance, and I'll make sure I find you on the floor there and shake your hand and get a picture together. And I will say this, just so people don't know, there's a ton of hotels there right around. A lot of really cool restaurants and bars and stuff like that for the breaks. So it's cold there, but you don't have to go real far. And if it's affordable to be able, I mean, it's cheaper than a ticket to the NCAAs by far. And so, and they can stay in, Coralville, Iowa City, even, a little further out if they need to. It's not a terrible drive. So hopefully we will have done a little bit to help you promote this thing and sell it out. I mean, I already responsible for 13 of the suites, but I'll try to do a little more.
I appreciate that.
All right. For Josh, I'm David. Thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll speak to you all soon.
Sounds good.